Welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. My name is Amber Larkins, published photographer, storytelling expert, visual artist, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach. This podcast was born from one question: how do I get inspiring stories of triumph out to the people who need to hear them the most? Come with me, enter my world, where lives are getting changed, heroes are getting developed, and greatness is being achieved. Welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. I am Amber Larkins, your host, and today I have with me Mr. Rich Bennett. I met him actually through podcasting. I was on his show, which is Conversations with Rich Bennett, and learned a little bit about his story and said, you have to come on my podcast. He runs a positive news source called the Harford County Living. That's out of Maryland, and he is doing a lot of things, interviewing a lot of amazing people, and just doing a lot of things as far as getting positive news out there and stories out there. So I'm so happy to have him here. He's got a story of his own that he's going to share with us today. So Rich, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. You're too kind, first of all, saying all these great things about me. But drop that mister, please. God, you make me feel so old.
Well, what else would I would not say anything other than positive things about you. I've had a very positive experience. I spent an hour or 2 hours chatting with you about my story. Which
we spent some good time, yeah.
Which brought up a little bit of your story. And I was like, oh my gosh, you've got to come on my podcast. I come on yours, but I'm eager to learn more about you. And it's funny because when I do these shows, I'm like, I want to know a little bit, but I also want to learn as I go too, so that the questions are completely authentic, right, and I can just come up with them as off the top of my head. So here we go. Are you ready?
I am ready. Awesome. I hold nothing back.
Did I leave anything out on your bio?
No, not really. I mean, Marine Corps veteran. As you can tell by the beard, I play Santa Claus every year. So a lot of people that come on my show, they look at me, they're like, wait a minute, where's Rich? Because if you look at my logo, I'm clean shaven. But I start growing this June 1st of every year for, Christmas time. But no, that's it. Just Marine Corps veteran, been here in Harford County, Maryland all my life, grew up here, and love it.
Yeah,
one of these days I'm going to get to Tennessee.
Yeah. And you got a big heart for the kids because you play Santa, and I'm sure you make their Christmas. So that's awesome.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And it's not just the little kids. It's even the big kids. When I say big kids, I mean adults. Come Christmas time, it's funny that it doesn't matter how old you are or how big you are. You get your picture taken with, everybody wants to get their picture taken with Santa. And I'll never forget one year I had, two guys, they had to be 300 pounds each. They wanted to get their picture taken with me. And they went and stood behind me. I said, what are you guys doing behind me? Well, we wouldn't stay behind. I said, no, come on, man. I got two legs. Sit on my lap. and they did. It's a picture they're not going to forget. And by that night when I was finished, I was like rubber-legged.
I bet.
Oh yeah, but they were happy. So
that's what I was gonna say. You bring smiles to people's face, and I truly believe that each of us as human beings have a place in the world to bring our contribution, whatever that is. And sometimes it's multifaceted. It's several different areas of contribution that we have, and that might be a small part of your contribution to just bringing smiles and joy to people's lives, especially around Christmas time, which is a joyful time, but it can be a sad time for some people too. So.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Actually, for a lot of people that I know, whether they lost a loved one or just certain holidays people aren't fond of. With me, believe it or not, one of my holidays I'm not fond of is Thanksgiving. But my two favorite holidays, and believe it or not, it's not Christmas, is Veterans Day and Halloween.
Really?
And Halloween, just because all of us, our neighbors, we all get together and we'll sit there. I bring all my grills out into the driveway and we'll sit there and grill out so we can have stuff for the adults as they bring the kids around.
Mhm.
So the kids will walk around the cul-de-sac, get their candy, and we'll have food and drinks for the adults. And it's fun. I like doing that better than I did decorating for Halloween.
Yeah.
And Veterans Day, because, well, it's just even before I served, I just always admired our veterans, for everything they did and do.
Yeah. Yeah. Very,
So.
very sacrificial. They give themselves as almost a sacrifice sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, about your background, your story?
Sure. I guess, well, with the trauma part, I think a lot of it happened when I served in the Marine Corps. Now, I mean, growing up, yeah, I mean, I went through some things. Seeing my brother lose his eye was hard. Just some of the things, I always had anger issues growing up. And just little things here and there, which, a lot of the things you see with families. But my oldest brother was always my idol. But he had a big heart too, because when he lost his eye, he was in the hospital and he calls us from the hospital. Said, "Hey man, what should I get on my eye?" We're like, "What?" He's like, "I gotta get a glass eye. Should I get like an American flag or tiger print?" So he's in good spirits,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, sure enough, he had to get a glass eye, and he didn't let it bother him. He still drove a tractor trailer and everything. Excuse me. But when I was in the Marine Corps, I was stationed out in California, and this was shortly after boot camp, so I was 18, and we were allowed to take the weekend off, and I went into, I think it's called Oceanside, or I can't even remember now. And to make a long story short, somehow or another, I ended up at some guy's house, and because he said there was a party back there. And the weird thing is, he knew my name and everything. I saw him walking down the street, and he called me over by name, which was very weird. And I figured that he knew somebody I was serving with. Went back to his house, and I believe I had to be drugged because I really don't remember a lot. But I was sexually assaulted, and he dropped me off at base the next, not even at base, dropped me like a mile away from post, I believe. And I had to walk back, and it stuck in my head. That was laid in my head for years. Actually, I want to say for decades, because that was 1981, or 82, early 82, 80, or late 81. And I just, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I want to say, am I allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I don't do a lot of cussing, but sometimes I do believe certain things require strong language, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, when it came to women, I was just a total asshole. And when I say that, I mean, I guess another way to say it, I was a whoremonger. I felt like there was something missing, and even when I had girlfriends, I was constantly cheating on them for decades. This was always in the back of my mind. And then that led, of course, to the anxiety, depression, and later on in life, I was with one girl for 6 years, and she was actually messing around on me. And that's the first time I actually considered suicide. And I actually had the rifle and was ready to do it. And it was my older brother that helped me with that and pulled me out of it. And the second time was with another woman that I was with. And that was the last time. And I never thought about it again. But the depression and the anxiety still lasted for a while. The anxiety up till, and I want to say it never goes away. The anxiety or depression, it comes back. But I was able to control it a while ago, and then I can't remember how many years now. A friend of mine who I went to elementary school with, and actually he and I went into the Marine Corps. He went in shortly after me. He became a sheriff's deputy, and him and another sheriff's deputy were killed one day. I want to say like within the past 10 years, and the anxiety just came back. I thought I was having a heart attack, with the panic attacks and everything. So I was finally able to control that. And since I started Harford County Living, it's been pretty good, except for one instance I did have a panic attack. But other than that, I've been fine. Depression, I can't tell you the last time I fell into depression. I never, and I'm self-diagnosed. I never went to a therapist or anything. But I found the book The Secret. I saw the movie first. The movie came out first, and then read the book The Secret, and that helped me a lot, and put my trust back into God again, because I blamed God for a lot of things. Me and my wife, we lost our first daughter, and I had blamed God at first for maybe like a day. I blamed God, and then I realized he had other plans. And to this day, she would have been 22. No, 23. Oh God, I am old. She would have been 23, but I feel like she's there with me all the time. Just looking over me. Because some of the stupid things I've done throughout the years, I shouldn't be here today. But
there's an obvious reason you're here, though.
Yeah. And which is one of the reasons I started the podcast too. I want to help other people as much as I can. That's why I serve on a lot of nonprofits. I'm always doing things around here and volunteering, and you have to. It helps out a lot, a whole lot.
So how do you think the assault back, around how old were you when this happened? You were a young
18.
man. 18.
Yeah, I was 18.
Do you think that a lot of the trauma stemmed from that?
I believe so, because I kept holding it in my head. I kept a lot of the stuff, the anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts didn't come until afterwards. Even some of the stuff I did in the Marine Corps, that didn't stick with me. It was always that was always in the back of in my head. And then what had happened, I saw Jonathan Sheck was on a podcast with Ashley Easter, and I don't know if you know who Jonathan Sheck is or not.
I'm not sure.
He's an actor, and he's from here. He was in that movie, That Thing You Do, and he talked about how he was sexually assaulted by a famous director and everything, or when they were filming a movie over in, I think he said, Italy. And I had watched the episode. It was live, and I went ahead and emailed him as soon as it was over and thanked him and told him, I said, man, John, I said, I told him, I went through the same thing, but I never talked about it. Next thing I know, my phone's ringing, and it was him. And he told me, he talked to me for a while and told me, he said, definitely you got to tell your wife and your kids, and tell your family. He said, it's going to lift a lot of weight off your shoulders. And it did. Mm-hmm. It did. And it took me a while to tell my wife and kids, but I finally did. And Yeah. I mean, I cried, and, they cried, and, ever since then, it's like, yeah. But the funny thing is, because I was on another podcast and I talked about it, and people and family and friends heard it and reached out to me and thanked me because they had gone through the same thing and were just never, they were scared to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that, if me telling my story helps one person, then that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's my vision with stories in general. I just feel like if we can talk about stories, our personal stories, it is vulnerable. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable thing to do, to open your mouth and talk about things that there's a lot of emotional, like almost like baggage that's attached to our stories, and there's emotional things that are attached, so shame or guilt or
Yeah.
anger, or there's all these emotions that's attached, and so it's a really hard thing to do, and I
Yeah.
don't dismiss the fact that sharing is hard, but
Yeah.
it in your opinion, it did something for you, it provided a release for you. Do you believe that does that for everybody, or
Oh, that's a good question. I would hope that it does it for everybody. I do know that it could trigger some emotions for people if they talk about it. It could make things worse. It's it's hard to say. I don't know if there's really an answer for that. I know with me, I mean, I was ashamed. In all honesty, I was afraid if I told somebody, back then that they would think something was wrong with me. Either I was gay or something else. And yeah, it just wow. I don't know. I know everybody I've talked to, it's helped them. I haven't come across anybody yet to where they open up about it and it's, it was hard or it was worse for them.
Mhm.
I guess
Likewise.
if you open up about it, and especially if you're sexually assaulted and the person that assaulted you was right there, if you open up in front of them, I guess and I would have, if I saw that person today, I couldn't even tell you who the hell it was. I wouldn't recognize them.
Mhm.
Because again, I swear I had to be drunk because I don't remember nothing.
Yeah.
I just remember this guy being on top of me, and that was it.
I think there's different types of trauma, obviously, and I
Yeah.
do think that you have to be careful when sharing. Like, I tell people when they come, if they're going to come on the podcast, or if I'm going to work with them in any like photography or however, whatever capacity that is, I tell people, there's a time and a place, and you do have to find
Mm-hmm.
that in your heart. Like, is this the time and place to share? I do think once you do that self-healing and you get to a place where you're ready to share, I do think there's a release. I think that something happens when
Yeah.
darkness no longer, it's like, this has no more control over me. I have nothing's
Mm-hmm.
holding me back now. Nobody can hold anything over my head. I don't feel guilt. I don't feel anything over these things. Not to say that those emotions don't creep back in from time to time, but
Mm-hmm.
I do believe it does something, but I do also believe you do have to proceed with caution. And
Yeah.
depending on the trauma, there's certain things that you have, you have to protect. Obviously, if you're in the middle of something, you can't talk about it right then, or you may have children that you need to protect, or whatever. Those circumstances
Yeah.
look different for different people. But, if you can do that growth and get to the place where you can talk about it, I do believe it does something to where we
Yeah.
can, it frees us in a sense.
Oh. It definitely freed me. And I mean, with what I do now, I don't. I think if I was talking to other people and they were opening up to me, and I never opened up about this, I think I would feel guilty in a way. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like how can it's like say I don't know, like a mechanic working on your car that's not a mechanic. He doesn't maybe that's a bad example, but it's I'm asking people to open up, and then I never really mentioned my story.
Mhm.
Now, and again, I talked about this on my podcast. I don't talk about it on my podcast because my podcast is for my guests. It's about my guests. It's not about me. Now, if it ever came up during the conversation, if they asked me what would happen, then yeah, I would tell them.
Mhm.
I'm not holding anything back.
Mhm.
And I've had people even come up, friends of mine, ask me about it, and I have no problem talking about it now.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
something that happens after you release it and you
Yeah.
don't feel those you're not as emotionally connected.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that happened, but it's like now I'm not as emotionally charged with
Yeah.
it. Where if it does come up in conversation or this comes to you and it's something that needs to be spoke about. Maybe you hear of someone else struggling through this
Mm-hmm.
and you're free to, put your arm on their shoulder and say, you know what, I've been through this too. That's beautiful in and of itself because you've just opened up to sometimes I believe in life, like we're put in specific places at specific times for specific reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes being free and being healed and being empathetic towards other people, like sometimes that opens doors that it's like now I'm doing something that I'm really supposed to do. I was put here for a
Yeah.
reason and I'm prepared for this time and place. So it's really it's an amazing thing. Life is it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I always love to tell this story. Me and a buddy of mine went to a store here and BJ's. As you're leaving, there's always that person there checking checking your receipt, making sure everything's in the counter or in the basket. So as we're leaving, the lady asked us to see the receipt and she says, "You guys find everything okay?" I said, "No." And she just jumped back and looked at me. She goes, "I'm sorry, what couldn't you find?" I took off my hat. I said, "My hair." And she just cracked up. She was rolling. Well, I went back the following week and the same lady was there. And as I'm leaving, she goes, "I want to thank you." I said, "For what?" She goes, "You're the one that said you couldn't find your hair." She goes, "I was having a bad day. I was seriously thinking about going home and ending it all. And it was because of you. You put a smile on my face. And I knew that somebody cared. And I just want to thank you." And I gave her my number. I said, "Look, anytime you want to talk, just call me." I said, you know, uh, there's no reason to. Um, I mean, no reason to end it all. But yeah, it just, you never know.
You never
It's
know.
smile. Every time you see somebody, smile. And that's one of the things that cracked me up because even with COVID, when everybody was wearing masks, I said the same thing, smile. And people were like, "Well, no, they can't see you smile." Yes, they can because it shows in your eyes.
Mhm.
If you look at somebody and smile, you could change their day. You can make everything for the better. Even just a simple little hello or a wave, you know, can change somebody's day.
Yeah, it's so true. And not even only in your eyes, but have you heard of this concept of posturing? Have you ever heard of that? Or let me
Yeah, like
explain.
body language.
Well, yeah, it's like if you walk in somewhere and your
Mm-hmm.
shoulders are slumped and you're just kind of
Oh, yeah.
down, like you look a certain way, but you also feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
If you consciously say to yourself, okay, I'm going to walk in this place, even though I feel like this, I am going to put my shoulders back. I'm going to walk in with confidence. I'm going to carry my head high. It does something not only with how people perceive you, but how you perceive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in photography, and this is something, it's like you have to posture yourself. And I don't know what comes first, the cart or the horse. Like what comes
Mm-hmm.
first, the feeling of confidence or carrying yourself confidently and then the feeling of confidence. Like so it's kind of a domino effect, I guess is what you would call it.
Yeah.
I believe that when you smile, it just automatically sends messages, subconscious messages to your brain to where you're just a much more happier person.
Mm-hmm.
And they say this too, like if you've ever done sales, I know you have. If you answer the phone with a smile on your face, you
It
come across as
shows.
being more friendly.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
so true. You're
Well, what
exactly
they
right.
say,
Smile at people.
I think it takes
Smile
more
more.
muscles to frown than it does to smile or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
everybody, you don't need to be, I always like to say, you don't need to be a Walter, you know, Jeff Dunham's dummy. You don't need to be a Walter. You can smile.
That's right. That's right. No, it's so important. And what you're saying is it's so true. And when you hear feedback like that, this is the thing that we go through these situations every single day and we never
Mm-hmm.
know how we've impacted someone. And sometimes we never will. You never will.
Yeah.
If
Oh,
if
yeah,
she
that's
hadn't
true.
have shared that with you, you would never know that.
I
But
would have never known.
she just so happened to feel led to share that with you. And now it's like, whoa, if I impacted her, how many other times has this happened that I've impacted someone and they've not said anything?
Yeah.
So
And
it
now,
should be.
whenever I go back there, every time I see her now, I just give her a hug.
Yeah.
You
I
know.
mean, now you got a friend. You
Yeah.
have a friend. And that's the thing. And I believe that that's really what we're here on earth to do, is to make, be joyful with each other. We need other people. It's like we can't
Yes.
do this life alone. So if we need other people, then be a blessing to other people too, because you never know when you're going to need
Spread
it.
the love.
That's
Spread
right.
the love.
That's right.
I mean,
So
it just, we need more of that.
yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this: Your Harford Living. Did I say that right? I lost my notes here.
Harford County Living with no
County
T.
Living. I was like, I know I'm
Harford
missing
County
something.
Living. Yes.
Harford County Living. This is a positive news source. So what led
Yes.
you to develop something that is just positive?
I've had many careers since after the Marine Corps. One of them being I had a degree in radio, and the last radio station I was working at, I was doing sales. And sales is tough in radio. If you don't have a car dealership, forget it. You're not making it. And where I was at, it was strictly commission, no salary, didn't even get car allowance or anything like that. And at the time, our daughter was still young. She was still going to daycare, and came home or went to work one day, and a couple of things happened that led up to it. But anyways, I went to work one day and I started crunching the numbers. It's like, man, this cannot be right. Started crunching the numbers again. So when I got home, I asked my wife to look over the numbers. She goes, "Are you sure this is right?" I said, "Yeah, from what I can see." And it ended up I was paying to go to work. And that's, nobody should pay to go to work. And one of the things I remember at the station was they told me when it came to sales, if somebody didn't have $5,000 a month to spend on advertising, don't waste your time. Well, here I was talking to, like little, restaurants and other places. They don't have that much to spend. So I went in the next day and I turned everything in. I didn't even give them 2 weeks notice, because if I'm paying to go to work, no, I can't. Came home and I decided I already had the domain harfordcountyliving.com. So I told my wife, I said, you know what? I got the DJ business. I could still fix computers on the side. I want to start this. And this way, I want a website where I feature nothing but good, positive news, but I want to highlight all the great things in Harford County. The places to visit, the businesses, and the people and so forth. But my thing was, I don't care if you're a car dealership or if you sold Avon, you should be able to afford advertising. Everybody should be able to afford it. So that was my model, and that's what I started doing. The hardest thing was trying to find good, positive news. And that, believe it or not, that's still a hard thing. Go figure. So that was October of 2012 is when I started that. And then October of 2015, I decided to start a YouTube show because I wanted to talk to the people in the county. And the whole idea, I struck up a deal with a local radio station, and the deal was I would record at the radio station, and somebody was going to videotape it. Radio station would play the audio on air on Saturday mornings, and I would have the video for YouTube. So my first episode, I brought in 3 breast cancer survivors because it was October. Amber, talking about being embarrassed. Halfway through, the guy running the camera is like, Rich, we have a problem. It's like, oh, what's the matter, Steve? He said, the camera's not working. I said, did you test it? He says, brand new out of the box. I tested it before I came in. It's not working, which then told me I only have a face for radio or audio. So luckily I had my cell phone. I was able to take pictures. I pieced it together. And I already had a sponsor because you have to have a sponsor when you do that because I didn't work at the radio station. So I had to pay the radio station in order to do this. Well, I signed up for 6 episodes and they kept playing other ads on the radio, which they weren't supposed to do. I had more people actually watching it on YouTube and I wasn't getting any response from the station. So I didn't renew. And my sponsor said, look, which is a local restaurant. They said, we have the side room. Why don't you record in here and make it a podcast? You don't need video. I was like, that's a great idea. So that's what I did. I started getting more people in from the county to promote them. I wanted to talk to these people I was featuring and talk about even the history of Harford County and all the good things in Harford County. And I kept doing that, did that for, did that for several years. And then a little over a year ago, I rebranded the name of the podcast and changed it to Conversations with Rich Bennett because I started talking to people from around the world and the podcast just blew up. So I still do HarfordCountyLiving.com and still feature the good news. And I do a video series there talking about upcoming events each month. And, but I still feature all the great people and businesses and nonprofits here in the county. One of the things I learned from podcasting, especially when I expanded and started talking to people throughout the country and throughout the world, was everybody, like you, and you've noticed this, everybody's got a story. And so I've had local people at first when I rebranded and a lot of local people wanted to come on. I'm like, I don't know if this is really a good fit. But then I realized it is because it doesn't matter where you're at. Your story can help other people. So because I record a lot of in person here and their stories are people are amazing in general.
For sure.
And now I'm finally another reason I started Harford County Living is I wanted to call them Stars of Harford County. Just feature somebody all the time. And I'm finally, after 11 years, I just put out a big announcement. I'm going to start doing that, not video, not on the podcast. I'm just going to write up an interview article about them. Because there's a lot of great people here. Just like everywhere. There's great people everywhere. And I think people need to know more about the people that are doing things, out there helping other people because they're, like the old phrase, they're the unsung heroes. And we need to praise them.
For sure. And it's inspirational. So when you hear of someone else helping someone, then you're like, I want to help someone. And I feel like there's sometimes like, if we could get those stories more heard, it just is so beautiful all around because not only are you helping people that could relate to your story, now they're like, well, just like your story. I mean, going back to that, people says, I was ashamed to talk about this, but now I see you're a strong guy. You come across really confident. You're like, you've got all these good things going. And we spoke about this when I come on your podcast, but people never know what someone's gone through. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
they don't know that until until someone tells them. So someone could look at you and just say, "Oh, this guy's a big, strong guy, and he loves kids, and he's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he's a confident guy, he's successful." But they have no idea the things that you've gone through to get you to that place. And until you say
Yeah.
it or speak it or, console someone with the experience that now makes you relatable to them, they don't know that. So I just feel like
Yeah.
story it's an amazing thing when we can, it helps build human connection in a real
Oh, yeah,
authentic way.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Real
Yeah,
authentically.
without a
Um,
doubt.
your podcast is doing amazing, right? You've had, how many
Well,
episodes are you
thank you.
in?
Yes. Probably close to 500, I
What do
think.
you release, one a week?
Yeah, I got to be close to 5. Well, I'm dropping 3 episodes a week now.
Oh
Every
my
Monday,
goodness.
Wednesday, and Friday. Yeah.
That's you're a busy guy, but you have a team that helps you with some of this, right?
No,
No?
I have a team that no, the only when it comes to the editing, the recording, that's all me. The
Mhm.
only people that help me is, well, as you know, through Podmatch, you get a lot of requests. So I
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
have a team that helps out with that. Because I have several co-hosts. One of the other things I love to do is if I have somebody that comes on the show and I feel that they're just a natural at it, always suggest that they should start a podcast. Not for everybody. And I'll invite them to be a co-host. So what I do is I have several different co-hosts, and we have a Facebook group, and then I'll put the profiles in the Facebook group and have them look at them. And if they see somebody there that would be a good fit, if they want to co-host it, they can, or if they think that I should have them on, then I'll do it that way. But no, everything else I do. I love doing it. I'm one of those weird podcasters, you know. I love doing the editing. I love doing the show notes. I love doing. There's so much freedom in it. You know, when I was
Mhm.
in radio, when I used to DJ in radio, oh my God, I couldn't even use my own name. You felt like a robot. You're playing what they tell you to play, saying what they tell you to say. You know, it's just this. No, I love it. I love the freedom. I love meeting people all the time. If you would have asked me this 10, 20 years ago, if I would have ever been interviewing people, I would have said, yeah, you're nuts. I could play music. I could talk up a song. I can't interview people.
Right.
Forget that.
I, I think podcasting is so awesome because the authenticity factor
Mm-hmm.
is huge. It's just like you come on, and I know that some people will construct like a list of questions and things
Mm-hmm.
that you want to hit. I believe in staying on track and being intentional about what you're speaking about. But I also believe there is something powerful that happens when it's like you're tapping into a conversation that two people are having about, it's almost like listening in, like, what can I hear about this conversation?
Yeah.
But it's an authenticity factor of like, I just can speak what I want. And like you said, you have this awesome freedom and just speaking from the top of your head and from your heart. That's
Yeah.
probably the most important thing. So I really enjoy doing podcasting as well.
I
Mhm.
mean, when you told me about the strip clubs, I had no idea. That threw me off. I'm like, huh? What? And then I think I shocked you as well.
Yeah, you did. You shocked me as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Um,
it's all part of the conversation. That's what makes it so much fun. Mm-hmm.
that is something too. You learn a ton of things about people. And before I ever started a podcast, I listened to a ton of podcasts and I always
Mm-hmm.
got value out of them. In fact, I would say one of the defining moments in my life I got from a podcast, right after I got divorced. And I was listening to a podcast, and she said, I had just really got into really listening to podcasts back then, business type podcast. And I was following this
Right.
lady, and she says, every morning on my mirror, I have written on my mirror, "You choose." So I get to remind myself that I
Ooh.
choose how I respond to things. And I will tell you, this has probably been about 3 months after I had split from my ex. And that's a whole nother story, but I had a lot of bitterness. And
Right.
that one statement, "You choose," it literally defined, I believe, defined who I am today. Because I said, I don't have to, I can choose not to be bitter. I can choose to make a life for my kids. I can choose to make my own life. I can choose to find my identity in myself. I mean, everything that filtered through this statement of "You choose."
Mm-hmm.
So I truly believe podcasting is powerful, and it gives you the opportunity to just kind of say things off the top of your head
Yeah.
that is profound. It's really profound. I don't know that I could just sit down and think this stuff and then just say it. Um, so it's great in so many ways. I'm way behind you. I,
You're doing great though.
I'm trying. I'm trying. But I have
You
a
are doing
real
awesome.
purpose and mission behind it,
Yeah.
as I believe, like in anything, when we have a purpose, a drive, and a mission to do something, then it's like, okay, that's driving. I have a big why. I'm not just doing
Mm-hmm.
it to do it. And I think sometimes we get burnout doing things. I've got burnout doing things before that has no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
It's just doing it to do it. You
Yeah.
have a big purpose and a big reason why too. You know,
Oh.
yeah, you're a huge blessing in so many people's lives. And you said something
Oh,
to me
thank you.
on your podcast. Um,
Uh-oh.
you said, you told me, as a elementary podcaster to like a master podcaster, I have to call you. You say to me, if you've not had anyone reach out to you yet and tell you that what you're doing is impactful, you will.
Oh,
And I
you
was like,
will.
oh, I have. But you've had these experience. Can you think of a one or two that it's really been
Oh
impactful to
God,
you?
yeah. We one of the things I talk about a lot on my podcast is addiction. And I have to thank one of my co-hosts, Wendy Beck, for that, because she runs a local nonprofit called Rage Against Addiction, where she's helping women in recovery. And we've had, people in recovery on. We've had professionals on. We've had a lot of different people on. It's happened more than once. But one time I had a guy from Canada contact me. And he actually emailed me and then called me, thanking me for an episode that he heard, because he had a family member that was in addiction and he didn't know what to do. He had no idea, and he heard that episode, and that helped him a lot. Because when it comes to addiction, there's so many things where you hear so many things like tough love and all that. And you other people say, "Oh, well, they can just quit." No, no, they really can't. They have to want to first. But when you have people on and they're explaining this, especially the people in recovery, wow, it's just, Amber, I'm not lying. I can't tell you how many episodes. I mean, I've had tears in my eyes hearing their stories. But when that gentleman called me up, that was one. Another one I had on was a young lady. Actually, I met her last year when I was playing Santa. She was reading her books, her children's books, to the kids. And I went up to her afterwards, introduced myself. I said, "Yeah, I would love to get you on the show." So she finally came on, and we recorded this in person. It was me and Wendy was co-hosting. And I always ask them, like growing up in high school, what was your plan? Well, she was a teacher in elementary school. I said, "Oh, you're doing that good with all your books that you're able to retire from teaching?" She goes, "No, actually what happened was," make a long story short, a little boy went to assault the little girl, and she stepped in the way, the teacher did. And he had grabbed her right arm, which it caused something, CRPS, chronic something pain syndrome. And she couldn't work anymore because she'd just be fine. And then all of a sudden she'd be paralyzed. Wouldn't be able to move or anything. She said and she gave birth afterwards. She goes, and she told me that giving birth was not as painful. It's like one of the most painful things you can ever have. When I posted that episode, because when I found that, I was like, oh, I want to find out more about this. I couldn't find anything here in the States, no support groups or anything. I had a support group from England contact me.
Wow.
Reach out to me and tell me how they've heard about it. And they did know of a group here in the United States. So I'm still on a mission to find out more about this and find more people and do a roundtable and do support any way to help this young lady and others that have it. So yeah, there's just, it's amazing what podcasting can do. And I know I learn something new every time I have somebody on, and my listeners do. And that's the main thing. If my listeners are learning something, if I'm able to help any of my listeners, or if they can help somebody from what they heard, then even if it's one person, then that's it hits you right here. And to me, that's the biggest reward you can ever have.
Yep. Yeah.
And it is. Podcasting is rewarding if done right.
I agree. I know we're kind of getting down to the wire here. I do want to ask you this, like if you had something to say to like your younger self or possibly someone who's gone through some of the things that you've been through, if someone come to you today and said, I'm really depressed and I'm on the verge of possibly even a lot of suicidal ideations, what advice, what would you say to them?
I've actually had that happen. I would, number one, I would just talk to them and tell them that, you mean a lot to people. You may not know that, but you do. More importantly, you mean a lot to yourself, and you mean a lot to the man upstairs, and talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk. Too many people are afraid to talk about it. They're ashamed, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. I always say, focus on the future, forget about the past. Because the past is it's the past. We're here in the present now, but focus on the future. I have a goal in life. My main goal is I'm going to make it to 100. No matter what, I am going to, and I'm hoping to be podcasting at 100 years old. But that's my goal. I'm going to do it. That's my long-term goal. And if you would have asked me this, 20 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, you're nuts. Forget it. But I would just tell them, talk, let's talk. I think that's the biggest thing is just, let's talk. What's on your mind? Why is this going on? And then if I know I can't help them, I would tell them, let's find you help. Because that's one thing. If somebody's even thinking suicide, you don't want to leave them alone. You don't want to leave them alone. Stay with them. And then find some help and call what I believe the number's 988 now. The national number.
I should know that.
I believe it's 988 that you can call or text. That's the other thing. Or you can text it too, and it'll help. That's the one good thing I've noticed, with our country. They are focusing a lot on that now, on mental health in general, which is good because, we know COVID didn't make anything better. Everything was on a rise big time, and it still is. And hopefully we can bring that and addiction down, but just, don't be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
Everybody's loved by somebody.
That's right. And, everyone has things that possibly promote shame in their lives, but you have to know that you're not alone in feeling that. Like I lived under the weight of shame for many years, and my story is different than your story, but the shame
Right.
is the same. You know,
Yeah.
you don't want to talk about certain things because of that, or um but I heard this thing the other day, and I thought this was so profound. It was a therapist, and she was talking about how if we have a wound, like if we have a wound on our skin, if you cover it up, like say you just put a band-aid on it, put a jacket on it, and somebody brushes up against it, you're still gonna feel that wound. It's gonna hurt, but the person that
Yeah.
bumped up against you doesn't know that you have that wound. So you're
Yeah.
suffering
Mm.
when that person didn't even know. And I believe that mental health is similar to this
Yeah.
because we have triggers. There's a book, and it's come up on my podcast a lot. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, called The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks in this book about how these traumas are going to manifest in your life some way. If you put a band-aid over them and cover them up and push them down, they're going to eventually come out in some type of way, trigger or whatever. And the best advice, I feel like, for people that are struggling is, maybe it's not time to share your story yet, but
Right.
maybe it's time to just get your house in order. Get yourself in
Yeah.
order. Learn to, self-growth. And I think that there is a place in depression, and I wonder your thoughts on this as well. But there is a place in depression where there's we're not in our right mind. You can't
Mm-mm.
you can't like think your way out of it.
Right.
And I truly believe that in those moments, you need to not be alone. Like you said, you need
Absolutely.
somebody to kind of can come in, because when you're stuck in all those negative thoughts of your head, sometimes that can lead you down that downward spiral.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, well, that's one of the reasons a lot of people go through depression is because they're alone. And yeah, that's the biggest. I think one of the biggest things you don't want to be alone.
Mm-mm,
And if you know somebody that's going through depression, don't leave them alone,
mm-mm.
because a lot of times it's the depression that leads to the suicide a lot.
Yeah.
You know, um,
And,
yeah,
and sometimes it's
stay with
just
them.
sometimes that what can ease that, just like in your story that you told, one little act of kindness,
Mm-hmm.
just being there,
Yeah,
just hugging someone. Sometimes it's that one little act that can solve a multitude of problems.
yeah,
So I do hope that that is something that people gather from hearing us talk, and knowing if whatever their trauma is, but especially if they have trauma that's weighted in shame, like,
mm-hmm.
get rid of that. And if you know of someone, just be kind. Be kind to them.
Yeah. Even if you don't know them, like
Yeah.
I didn't know that lady at the store.
Yeah.
You can save somebody's life.
Yes.
You may have saved somebody's life and not even know it.
That's right. How many times in our lives
Yeah,
we'll never know. You'll
yeah,
never know. But that's powerful
exactly.
stuff, man. Very powerful stuff. So, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, number one, I just want to thank you very much
Oh,
for inviting me on. And God, I could sit there and talk to you for hours
I
and
know.
hours and hours. Um, but no, now when it comes to mental health, everybody's different, and I just want to tell anybody that's going through anything, talk about it. If you need a therapist, talk to a therapist. If you need to go on medication, go on medication. Medication. Everybody's different. For me, what helped with me was the reading of The Secret, and believe it or not, Mitch Albom's Tuesdays with Maury helped me a lot. Putting my faith back into God helped me a lot, and being grateful. Honestly, being grateful. I have a routine that I do every night before I go. When I told you about we lost our first daughter, and I keep a little angel by my bed that we were able to put in her hand. So every night before I go to bed, I hold that. I say a prayer. When I wake up in the morning, before I even get out of bed, I grab it again, hold it. Of course, I put my hand on the Bible. I say a prayer, but I'm always thanking God. I'm not asking God for anything. I'm thanking him for everything. And then my other daughter got me when she was very, very little. She found a rock. It's like a polished rock and it looks like a heart. And I call it my grateful rock. So then I grab that and I always say something that I'm grateful for. And that I have to laugh because my daughter and my wife, they're like, we haven't had our coffee yet. Don't talk to us. I get up, I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm ready to go. And I believe that that's one of the reasons. Meditation helps a lot. Yoga, there's so many things that you can do that'll help you. And but again, the biggest thing is talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. And I just hope that, here I can provide whatever resources. I'll definitely put some stuff in the show notes as well. So if you are listening, you hopefully will have some resources. And if not, then feel free to reach out to me. I would love to try to point you in the right direction, however that looks. So with that being said, Rich, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you. Really appreciate you sharing your story. It takes a lot of courage and vulnerability, but yet, who knows who that helps. So thank you so much for sharing. It's always a pleasure talking with you and going back and forth. And you do have such a positive attitude that it does breed positivity. So you're definitely doing the right thing. I feel like in your profession you're right where God's called you to be.
Well, thank you. It's been a true honor. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Through the Trauma podcast. If you have found value in this episode or believe in the mission behind what we are doing, please subscribe so that you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to check out our transformation project at transformationthroughtraumaproject.com, where we help inspirational stories get heard on a larger scale through multiple platforms. If you know someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.